Hi, thanks for joining me in this video today. I'm going to be talking about the Fourth Amendment some more, and I'm going to be explaining how reasonable suspicion can develop into probable cause, and the particular examples that I'm going to be using today are cases that the Supreme Court has looked at involving informants. So, starting with reasonable suspicion, there was a case that the Supreme Court looked at where there was a 911 phone call, and the 911 caller reported that they had just been run off the road, or almost run off the road, by a truck. And they gave some details about the truck. I can't remember exactly what make or model it was, but they gave the make and the model, and they gave a license plate and the color of the truck as well. And a police officer went out there, and near the area, not too far from where the call was made, the police officer found a truck and made the traffic stop. And what the officer ended up finding was, or the officer smelt marijuana, ended up searching the truck and finding a bunch of marijuana in the truck. So in that situation, the Supreme Court was looking at, well, was there enough for the officer to have a reasonable suspicion to pull the person over? Because once the person was pulled over, and again, this is a Supreme Court case, so we're looking federally, and in California, Prop 64 wasn't a thing yet, so the possession of marijuana and the marijuana laws were a little bit different when this court case came down. Now, once the police officer was out of his car and had smelled the marijuana coming from the truck, then he may have had probable cause to continue his search and his investigation and all of that at that point. But what the Supreme Court was interested in was whether or not the police officer had reasonable suspicion to make the stop to begin with. And what the Supreme Court ended up looking at was, well, was there enough information and reliable enough information from this 911 call that gave the police officer specific and articulable facts to believe that criminal activity was afoot. And the Supreme Court ended up deciding that, yes, there was enough information to believe that criminal activity was afoot, and particularly drunk driving, or some kind of a driving under the influence. The person had nearly run this other car off the road and continued to drive. So, if there was a drunk driving situation, then it was an ongoing issue. So the Supreme Court said that the police officers did have reasonable suspicion to believe, to make a traffic stop, and then once they made the traffic stop, smelt the marijuana, then they had probable cause at that point. So that's a good case that shows how a reasonable suspicion can develop into probable cause, but and it also shows what the Supreme Court is looking for when it's dealing with situations where there's a informant. And those factors that the court would be looking at are really is the information reliable, and is the informant somebody who the police officers have used before, or is it kind of an anonymous tip? And they're looking for some ways to confirm what the 911 caller or the anonymous tipper is providing the police. So another case, and another one using just a informant, kind of an anonymous tip situation, is where a letter was sent to a police department, and it said, oh, these people are selling drugs out of their house at this address, and here's how they do it. And it went into detail how one of them would drive down to Florida and then fly back, and then the other would fly down to Florida and drive the car back from Florida. And in the interim time, while the car was parked in Florida, it would be filled up with drugs that they would then drive back to their home state and then sell there. So there was this anonymous tip, but then the police officers did more follow-up. They went to another informant and tried to get more information. They had confirmed that one of these people was making this trip soon and got their flight records. And then once the person was actually in flight, they had other police agencies watching them and kind of surveilling them. They were able to confirm through their investigations some of those facts. So the police officers, in the end, put together all this information, went and got a warrant from a judge, and then went and searched the car and the home of these people and found a bunch of drugs and weapons and whatnot. And the Supreme Court was looking at whether or not there was probable cause in that situation. And what the Supreme Court ended up deciding is that there was. The informant's tips on it their own may not have been enough in that situation for probable cause. And who knows whether that would have been enough for reasonable suspicion, because the court wasn't really looking at that particular issue. But maybe there was reasonable suspicion, but there wasn't probable cause just based off of that alone. Yet when you start adding more and more facts to the situation and more confirming facts, then you're starting to build a case towards probable cause. And that's what the court ultimately found, is that there was probable cause because of the work that the police officers had put in. So, that's another example just of how reasonable suspicion can kind of develop into probable cause under certain situations and once certain work has been done. So I hope that you've learned something from this video. I hope that I've been able to explain these points in somewhat of an articulate way. And thank you for joining me. I hope you join me next time. We'll probably be moving away from probable cause for now, although it's still going to be a central issue for what we'll continue to be talking about. But I hope to see you next time. Thanks.